Hey guys, welcome back to Control Z Crypto. So I get a lot of requests to talk about the tons of baked beans forks that have been coming out, and these things are all over the place at the moment. My email inbox is just full of requests from devs who want me to promote these things, and just reminds me, we saw a similar thing a few weeks ago with the ROI dApps after the success of Matic Staker, because when these things start gaining traction, you start to see tens of millions of dollars locked, and people see an opportunity for some easy money because as a dev or an owner, if you're making between say 3 and 10% on each buy and sell, those tens of millions in TVL can translate into millions in profit. For not a lot of work. It can take as little as a day or a few days to get these things up and running, depending on how much effort you want to put into customization. So the question is it worth it to invest in any of these baked beans forks? What are they all about? So I just wanted to look at a few of these as an example. And the first one is Ruby Mine, which is quite popular on AVAX. It's got about $1 million on the contract at the moment. And it's basically a straight fork of baked beans, not a whole lot of innovation if you have a look at it. I think the biggest innovation they've done is they've increased that fee from 3% to 8%. And I've had a look at the code, by the way. It says 8% deposit there, but if you take a look at the code here for Ruby, you can see on the function sell rubies that that fee is also on the cells as well. So that's actually broken up into 4 fees of 2% each there, but it adds up to 8%. So that 8% is not just on the deposit, it is on a sell as well. So Ruby Mine, same thing, different chain, essentially higher fees. The next one I want to take a look at is Vineyard. So this is the Vineyard on Matic, another popular one. It's had a pretty good build up to about 300k USD on the balance, but it's been dropping, which is not a good sign. But you never know if the investments are low on these things. There's always a chance that they'll pick up. It's only once you hit this real strong peak of lots of investments that they kind of never come back up again. So there's a chance for this one. It's I wouldn't personally invest, but the chance is there. And once again, it's a copy of baked beans with your new and improved 8% fee. Also on deposits and withdrawals in the code. But here you start to get a little bit of innovation, and they've added an extra fee here for insurance. So basically there's a treasury or an insurance fund, and it's designed to basically replenish the contract balance and keep it healthy. And the question is, do these kinds of measures work? So firstly, I just want to mention that at the moment, for any of this to work, you've got to trust the owners, because the treasury and the insurance fund, they're not really separate smart contracts. And if you look at the code, what really comes out is just 16%. So let's have a look at the Vineyard. You can have a look at this dev fee. So it's basically just a 16% fee which go to the devs. And you've also got the Hayes crypto audit here, which is reflecting the same thing actually. Sorry, this is CZ's Kitchen. The other one here, you can see that that's just a 16% fee, and they're not calling this out as any sort of sustainability measure. They're just basically saying 16% goes to the devs, and they say they're going to put some of that back into the contract, but I mean, it's not locked into a smart contract, so you can't really make them, and there's not a whole lot you can do if they don't do it. So essentially you're trusting them to do the right thing as a starting point. But if we just set aside that kind of major security issue, if you're trusting that at the moment, the question I'm trying to answer are these kinds of measures like treasuries and insurance funds and fees that get returned to the contract balance, do these kinds of things actually work and make the contracts more sustainable? And the short answer is sort of, a tiny bit, but not really. And we don't need to speculate on this because we've seen this exact thing play out before in the ROI dApp space. And I'll show you BNB Fury. This is a random example, and I just happen to still have this bookmarked, but BNB Fury is obviously long dead now, and it had kind of this similar innovative insurance pool. And there are lots of others that did similar things, and basically it's just a method that they try to differentiate themselves among all the other forks and all the other copies by introducing features really that sound good, but they don't do a whole lot. So what do treasuries and insurance funds effectively do? Well, they take a percentage of returns that are going to be paid out, and they throw them back onto the contract balance either straight away or later on down the track. And the reason this is not really effective is it's basically exactly the same thing as just making the return slightly smaller in the first place. So just imagine if you're paying out 8% daily, as the Vineyard says they do on their info, and instead of paying that 8%, you're just taking out 8% of that 8%, which is the fee, and putting that back onto the contract balance. So what you're effectively doing is just lowering that return rate from 8% to 92% of 8%, which is 7.36%. So lowering the returns from 8% to 7.36% doesn't sound like much, because it isn't much. It's basically nothing. And when back when I was modeling ROI dApps, it turned out that when we account for these kinds of measures to make these apps more, quote, sustainable, they were only more sustainable for a matter of a few hours or a day. That kind of minor decrease in interest is just not enough really to make a big impact. So look, be skeptical about these kinds of things. That they're almost entirely just there for marketing. They're not going to secure the investment, make it more sustainable, quote, or anything along those lines. That it's just a slightly effectively lowering that interest rate very slightly. Okay, so the next one I wanted to have a look at is CZ's Kitchen, which is getting a lot of traction. A lot of people are talking about it. A few people commented on my videos asking me to have a look at this one. It looks like there's about $1 million on the contract balance at the moment, and which is not bad for being out for a couple of days. So it's got some promise on that side. Now, you could say CZ's does innovate in a couple of ways. So they've made some changes to the website. It's a slightly different layout. They've done some some graphics, and they've changed this slightly, I'll give them some credit, because if you have a look at the code, they have actually made a lot of changes to the code, which shows me that there's actually some developers there. So I haven't done a deep dive on this code to break down how it works. I don't think it's worth doing that, but just reading through it, they've simplified a lot of things and they've improved the structure. You can see this example highlighted here, the returns formula that I showed you guys earlier. It's actually readable now. It's not just a jumble of function calls out to the maths library, and it's much easier to read. It's much easier to scrutinize the code for someone who wants to check the code and see what it's doing and making sure they understand what they're getting into. It's a lot more well structured and readable, which is all good stuff in my opinion. But what they're using as their biggest selling point is this plan or intention to remove the Ponzonomics by introducing these external funding sources. And you can see here what they're planning is this NFT marketplace, some sort of farm token basically, and a game. So if you've watched a few of my other videos, you pretty much already know what I'm going to say about this, and it's the same thing that I've said about the BCT token, and it's the same thing I said in my video about auto stakers. And the first thing is this right underneath everything here. If you look, coming soon, apply soon, coming soon. This stuff doesn't exist yet. So when you're investing in CZs, you're essentially investing in a baked beans clone with a promise attached, and it's up to you whether you want to believe in that promise. But personally, I'm always extremely skeptical about these things, and it's not just for the sake of being cynical or whatever. It's because it's really hard to make a consistent, solid profit in DeFi. It's just hard. Outside of this kind of Ponzonomics, if you want to just create some sort of app that generates value consistently, it's really hard to do it, and you can't underestimate what it takes. So look, forget about the whole CZ Kitchen part up here at the moment. Just look at these three things. So if someone said they were going to sell random NFTs, create an NFT marketplace to sell NFTs, or if a new project came out saying, hey, we're going to create a farm token or a new PTE game, would you be excited about that? Would you put your money into any of those things if they were just a standalone project that hadn't been developed, that it was just a kind of a promise? And, how much money do you think those things are going to make? And any of them going to be profitable in and of themselves? So if the CZ Baked Beans fork, if this becomes popular, are these things actually going to make anything close to the amount of money that's going to be needed to keep that contract balance alive? Just remember there are thousands of NFTs, NFT marketplaces, thousands of tokens, who knows how many P2E games, how many are successful, how many are actually profitable? Very, very few. So look, in my opinion, when it comes to just understanding whether this is a good opportunity or if this is real or not, in my opinion, the proof has to come first. So firstly, build something that can generate that real sustainable value. And then if you want, you can use that value to fund another project or a Baked Beans clone or something along those lines. But until all of this actually exists and it's actually making money and it's actually hitting the contract balance, it's just not real. It's a promise. And look, again, I'm trying to be realistic here, because I've seen this promise made time and time again all over this part of DeFi, and the promise that removing Ponzonomics and actually delivering real value has been made for countless of these apps. And if someone's ever actually done it, I've never heard about it. So just take that into consideration. All right. So far, there's been a lot of negativity, and I've been told I should be more positive and I should be building these apps up and not just trying to destroy them and take down, this part of DeFi. And I want to be clear with you guys. I'm not trying to destroy anything here. I'm just trying to keep it real and be honest with you about what I see as the opportunities and what I see as being the risks with all of these contracts. And listen, I absolutely believe in crypto and in DeFi. I really enjoy this space. I want things to succeed in the long term, and I really do. That's why I'm here. That's why I make these videos. That's why I care about crypto and DeFi. But I need to inject some realism into the discussion, because I think just adding to the hype is only going to hurt a lot of people and be bad for crypto really in the long term. Because the fact is, with all of these apps, all of these ROI dApps, all of these Baked Beans forks, they're all kind of at this shady edge of DeFi. They're not the stable coins. They're not the stable rewards, the sustainable plays. These are the highest risk plays that you can make. And generally speaking, if you're investing in these things without understanding them, without having a good basis for your investment, then you're basically just gambling, right? You're throwing your money in, hoping these things take off, and you may be fine with doing that. That's all cool. That's up to you. I'm not. I never make financial advice if that's how you want to spend your money, but that's why I talk about them. And remember, one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, because you may not have thought of it in these terms, is that most people who invest in these dApps, so be it these ROI dApps that we've spoken about before, or Baked Beans, or any of these forks, most people who invest in them are going to lose money. That's most people. And I need to repeat it. Most people are going to lose money investing in these protocols. And that's not just an exaggeration, that's a fact. Because once everyone throws in their investment, and then from that, the devs take their cut, and then the referral bonuses come out, there's going to be less money in that pot than there was to start with. So some people are going to be able to make their investment back. Some people are going to make really good profits, but that leaves all the other people who have to be the majority of the people. Just imagine that scenario. The majority of people are going to come out with less money than they took in, and that's just a fact. That's how the maths works. So look, be skeptical when people talk about building communities or building wealth together and growing these things for the future. Look, there are times in crypto when that can be true. There are some protocols and some chains that have good long-term promise, and I think that there's an opportunity for it to not be a zero-sum game, and everyone can kind of build wealth together. But it's just not true for Ponzi-based apps. The fact is that most people are going to lose money, and you need to be smart and you need to look out for yourself. So on that note, I wanted to just say a few things about referrals. So here's the referral box here, and you can see earn 12.5% of the BNB deposited by anyone who uses your referral link. So all of these apps give referral bonuses, usually about somewhere around 12.5%. And you might look at that 12.5% and think, well, that's not that high. So what if people make 12.5%? It's not such a big deal, whatever. Well, think about this. So it's 12.5% on deposits and it's 12.5% on rebates. So what does that mean? Well, you make an investment and straight off the bat, your referrer gets 12.5% of your initial investment straight away. And then you start following, you read the rules, you start following 6-1 and you rebake 6 times and you eat once a week. So when you rebake, every 24 hours of your holding of beans or rubies or whatever plates, I don't know what it is in this one, whatever you hold increases by 8%. So basically you're adding to 8% of your initial investment in that time period. And maths is more complicated, but just to simplify it, rough figures. So you're eating once a week, you're getting that 8% return just once a week. And meanwhile, you rebake 6 times a week, which means that your referrer gets 12.5% of the 8%. And 12.5% of 8% is exactly 1%. So 1% of your initial investment every week. And yes, there's compounding in the contract, in the calculation, but the compounding actually affects both your rewards and your referrers. So, putting all that aside, just dealing with the base numbers, I think it's fine just for a rough comparison. So you're getting 8% of your initial each week when you eat that once a week, and your referrer is getting 6% of your initial each week every time you rebake, assuming you rebake 6 times a week. But they've already made back that first 12.5% when you first deposited. So they've got this head start. And so what that means if you're following 6-1 and it's taking you about 6 to 8 weeks to make back your initial investment is that roughly around the same time that you make back your initial investment, your referrer has also made back your initial investment. Why? Because you've been getting that 8% a week. They've been getting the 6% a week on top of that initial 12.5 investment. So when you actually work out the numbers and do the calculations, it's not a 12.5% referral bonus as it seems to be when you look at it. It's more like 100% referral bonus, because as long as you make back your initial investment, your referral also makes back that same amount of money. And if you continue to profit, they continue to profit, and it becomes much higher than 100%. Understand, I guess, to give you some context of why baked beans and these forks are getting so much publicity. It's because people are making a ton of money out of this, out of the referrals specifically. And I've got a very small channel, and as you are probably aware, I absolutely haven't been shilling baked beans. I'm not the person who's been going out and telling people to rebake. It's been almost the opposite of that, and I've got a lot of flack for that, and I've probably turned off more than one person from investing in baked beans because of that approach. But even with this the approach I've been taking, I've made personally more than a couple of thousand dollars just from referrals on baked beans in just a few weeks. So it's ridiculous. That rate is absolutely obscene. And you can imagine what some other people are getting with much bigger channels, tens of thousands of subscribers who tell their followers to rebake and rebake more. I imagine some of these guys must be getting tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in referral bonuses. I've seen channels do live withdrawals of tens of thousands in BNB. So it's not... it's very possible, and nothing against these guys. We're all here to make money, and you can understand why they do it. But I say this just to explain to you guys what the game is that's being played here, and why these contracts are getting so much publicity, and why people are always telling you to rebake. So, you might think, well, why doesn't someone just come out with one of these contracts without a referral bonus? Just get rid of the referral bonus, have a fork, set that value of referral to 0. It's basically a 1 minute change in the code, and basically it's a double-edged sword. That kind of contract would be a lot better for investors. It's still going to be risky. It's not going to be a safe investment. It may not necessarily be a good investment, but it would be better for investors. But no one's going to talk about it. So no one's going to publicize it. No one's going to build a community around it. And so it doesn't happen. It's not going to get any traction. And that's why you don't see it. It's very possible that someone has created one of these forks and put it out in the world, but no one is talking about it. And that's why the referrals are so high as they are. And it's just an unfortunate fact of the way that the world works at the moment. All right. So I want to end on a little bit of positivity. I guess you could call it positivity. For the people who have made it this far into the video, I want to help you to make money from these forks if that's possible, or at least understand where the money is made. So if these forks offer nothing new, what then do they bring to the table, and what opportunity do they offer to investors? Why would you even invest if they're basically the same thing? Well, in my opinion, there's really only one thing they offer, and basically what they offer is just the opportunity to get in early. And if you saw my last video on auto stakers, you'll know that there are only two questions that I ask myself when deciding to invest in any Ponzi-based contract. And those things are, am I early? And will others follow? So to make money from a Ponzi, you need to be early, and you need enough people to come in after you to make sure you get your investment back with some profit. And these forks give you an opportunity to be early. So all of them do that. If you're reasonably quick and you deposit your money, you're going to be early. So that's the easy part. It's easy to be early, and the question is whether there's going to be enough to follow you, and that's going to be the hard part. And the problem I see with the environment as it is now is that there's so much fragmentation, so many new clones, new forks. It's hard for any one of them to gain enough momentum to grow and to a sustainable level for early investors to make back their money. And that's basically the risk you take when you deposit, that things aren't going to build from the point that they are when you deposit. And as you can imagine, people looking around for which one to invest in don't know which one to invest in. They kind of try one, they try the other, and nothing really grows as a consequence. So that's the risk. And what we saw in the ROI space with ROI apps, as people lost money in the first round and kind of worked out what these things were all about, they became more savvy, and basically every new contract just had large investments on day 1 or 2, and then nothing coming in after that. And when things start to get to that level, the risk becomes too high to invest in these apps, because you've got no assurance that you're going to make your money back once all of the fees and the referrals come out. So it's basically time to put them aside and move on to whatever the new thing is in DeFi. And look, I wanted to just look at the deposits for CZ's Kitchen. So this is day 1. You can see the black line is deposits, and this is day 2, and I'm not sure what the timing is around this, but you can see already there's a massive day 1, basically nothing on day 2, and it looks like things, if I interpret this correctly and think about the impact on what it means for the whole space, it seems things are headed in the same direction as ROI apps, and it might take quicker to do that because people are a lot quicker to get savvy about this kind of thing. So that's the reason why, on top of everything I said about fees, referrals, risk, that's why personally I'm not investing in any of these forks right now. I just don't see, basically from what I've seen, there isn't really much of an opportunity there when you take into account all the fragmentation and all the risks. But if one of these things does take off, and if we one of these things does start to get an uptake, starts to build a community, and people are investing, if it's got legs, then I think that view can obviously always change. And if that happens, then I would definitely invest, because it really doesn't matter when it comes down to it whether the contract has good features, like if it's got some sort of insurance pool, or if it's got like a token attached. None of those things matter. Like if it's a Ponzi, if you've worked out it's a Ponzi, all that matters are those two things that I mentioned. Number 1, am I early? Number 2, are other people going to follow? And all the stuff I said earlier about insurance funds not making a difference and trying to inject money from external sources like games and and NFT marketplaces, those things aren't going to deliver. None of that really matters. I mean, I say that to inform you guys so you can make a educated decision after doing your own research about what these things have to offer. But when it comes down to investing, whether or not I want to invest in one of these contracts, the only thing that matters is getting in early enough and having enough people follow you. So if enough people go to CZ's Kitchen, they look at what what they're offering and they believe it, whether or not it's true or whether or not it becomes true, whether if people believe it, then the contract's going to have momentum and I'll invest. And that's what it's going to come down to for me. Is really just the momentum and understanding whether there is an opportunity to make returns out of these very risky plays. Once again, they are risky and most people will lose money. So understand that. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate the views and the support that I've had over the last couple of weeks. It's been really great. And makes me want to make more videos in the future. So as always, stay safe and I'll see you in the next one.